The 2 years was the only way that I was able to figure out the business we're in now.
Most entrepreneurs don't fail because they have bad ideas. They fail because they stay stuck in the same loop, working just hard enough to survive.
Definitely didn't have an idea while at Gartner. I knew I wanted to be entrepreneurial.
Ben Siegel is the founder of Cybernest, an expert network that's changing how cybersecurity leaders share knowledge.
I didn't go the venture studio route, but why that was so difficult for me at the time was like I was taking my savings and living off of it every month. And I did that for 15 months of the business, and I ended up not having savings.
Today, we're breaking down the #1 mistake that keeps founders broke for years, how to validate an idea before you spend months building the wrong thing, why playing it safe in your career is actually the most dangerous move you can make. Welcome to Certainty and Chaos. Let's get into it. All right, Ben Siegel. We go from hawking IT advisory research, talking about opening up salad franchises, to now being community-led CEOs in the tech industry, man. We're happy to have you on.
Love it, Pat. Thanks for the invites. I still think our salad idea is a winner, but maybe in a different life, right?
I've talked to so many like franchise brokers. They're effectively like, oh, I operate in the franchise space. They get a commission if they get people to, sign up for as a franchise owner. Every time I'm like, you didn't seem to mention any salad franchises. Any reason?
No. And for context, for those that are listening, Pat and I lived in Fort Myers, Florida for quite some time, and they just did not have a build your salad place. And a growing professional community, obviously a lot of elderly. But look, everyone loves salad. So I think we had a winner from the start.
Yeah. Those cubicle conversations got real weird one way or another. I could bring up a couple about, dogs in other countries while we're selling research, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. But no, man. So I'd love to, I know we talked real early. I think you were about 8 months into Cybernest when I was just starting to invest clearly, talking about the development stuff. But I don't think I ever learned how you actually went from account executive to BD at Gartner into like this entrepreneur. Like, will you walk me through that journey and how it all happened?
Yeah. So, I think for me, Gartner was kind of the first entry point into what is technology advisory and why do companies want to talk to analysts and why do CIOs and CISOs and, trust this type of advisory. And that was kind of like my first introduction. Because I think we think about technology and we're like, oh, we use the tools that we had in front of us. Like technology is Apple and all these things. And then when you start to realize whoa, enterprise software, there's so many different tech spaces. We were working with tech and service providers that were doing everything from security to network consolidation to all these really cool things. And it forced me to have to go, whoa, what are these technologies? How do they work? Who owns them? Why do they even exist? And you start to realize whoa, big companies, they have hundreds and thousands of tools, but they need help figuring out what they should buy and how to navigate the market. And Gartner played a very unique role, I think, in being that trusted third party to an industry that, needed validation. And so this idea of whoa, I need help with my purchase. I need support internally. We would always say it would always be said, you'll never lose your job if you buy IBM. That was thrown around all the time. And so it's well, why does that exist? Why do security or IT leaders need the justification? It's because, these are big purchases and they mean a lot to the business. And so that was kind of my first entry point, was learning about this technology space. And then as I worked with clients and as we brought on clients, I love cyber, working with cybersecurity companies more. One, just because I think they were looked at the relationship the right way. And ultimately, I enjoyed learning about the different technologies. And it seemed also really cool. This idea of whoa, I'm fighting the good fight and fighting the bad guys. And that was exciting. It also felt maybe if I'm helping these companies grow and they're helping companies protect themselves. Like I'm kind of helping my sister, my parents, my fiance, all, like helping, like doing good in the world. But I felt like at Gartner, it was really tough to like service the clients in a way that they really needed the help. Like we were really trying to get analysts to like, speak on the customer and help their messaging and help their product. And I felt a lot of internal friction. I don't know if you felt that as well. Like it felt a lot of like, let's try to like work the request or work the relationship so that we can get what the client needs, but I felt a lot of internal pushback from analysts and just kind of the bureaucracy. And so at that point, I was like, okay, well, the way my clients are trying to use these analysts is not really how they want to be used. They're not seeing a lot of success. I know we had, trouble with churn and account management stuff, and just got really burnt out by like, I love this industry. I love working with tech and service providers. I love, talking to IT and security leaders, but I don't like the model. So is there a different model? And now today, Cybernest is a knowledge sharing platform powered by a vetted community of IT and security professionals. It's grown to over 700 security leaders who use the platform to share resources and share content and validate the information. They can, do ratings and reviews. And really, we're kind of like a content discovery and curation platform. But I didn't know that was the business that we were going to do. At the start, it was like, hey, I really am just curious about like why people are using Gartner and do they even like Gartner? What else do they use? Who do they trust? Specifically security leaders. And luckily at the time had about 5 CISOs that I was connected to on LinkedIn and reached out to them and was like, hey, I'm leaving Gartner. I would just love, 10 minutes of your time, which was very difficult, obviously, to get because they're very busy, but like just getting kind of some breakthroughs of getting a few people to talk to me and then finding some other trusted sources in the industry that made intros for me. That was kind of my first, whoa, I just did 10 interviews with 10 CISOs about how they stay up to date in the industry. Who do they trust? How do they learn? And ended up going from 10 to about 100, like I would call them 100 interviews. And that became like the early group of Cybernest, which was like this early community of security leaders who wanted to essentially have a new community that was vetted. It wasn't in Slack, but it was a platform that they could find relevant information. They could share content with their peers, not on LinkedIn publicly, where like all these salespeople are like, hey, great article or great content piece. But they could do it privately. And then as we started to ask, questions like, why do you want to share and who do you want to share it with? And what are you going to do with the information? That became the starting roadmap for what Cybernest became. And then ultimate was like, I think there's a true business here. Now I need money and I need to build a team to like validate this insight.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the starting point.
So when you were going through all that, right? You're at Gartner, you're having these interview questions. Were you leaving Gartner like with the direction that like, hey, I have this early idea for Cybernest, or was it like, I'm leaving Gartner, I want to be an entrepreneur. I started having conversations like the customer development interviews. Like what was the journey from like talking to CISOs, seeing the gap to having the idea to building it?
So I definitely didn't have an idea while at Gartner. I knew I wanted to do something new. I knew I wanted to be entrepreneurial. I left Gartner actually with really no plan. Like I had the comfortability of being like, I think I can get another job in sales. But I didn't know the idea. And so I spent like 2 months. I was like, okay, let me see like if there's an idea after the 2 months. And if it's worth pursuing, then I'll start to take it very seriously around, can I actually do this for the next 2 years was kind of the thought. And in those 2 months had those 100 conversations. And then after I had the 100 conversations, I was like, okay, what do I do now? Because I can't do this alone. And I also like what people are telling me, see, this is not like a service, and definitely not like a service that I can do myself. It seems like an actual product. And so then it went very much into like, whoa, now I need to like build Ben into like this person who now is going to try to build a software company, or build a software platform. Whether it's a company, that came later, but like we're going to build this software and then we're going to actually go to all those 100 people and be like, remember when you told me this? And remember when we walked through this Figma? Like, we actually built it. Will you be one of our first users on the platform? And we give us feedback. And it was always feedback driven. And I think that that's the best way to build a company early on is like most people like have this idea, they go build it and then they like ship it and they're like, are you willing to pay for it? And that wasn't our journey. It was like, I found people who were passionate about what we were doing. I think maybe just passionate about me in some ways, like the enthusiasm I had, like the excitement I had for it. And then once we ultimately built it, it was like, I know this isn't the version that like you're ready to pay for yet, but help us get there. Like, are we on the right track? How would you improve it? Would you share it with 5 peers of yours? And those were like the micro moments where I was like, whoa, I think I'm building momentum. Like, I think there's something here yet. Yes, we're not making money yet, but I felt like I was paid in people's attention, if that makes sense. Like the fact that they cared enough to talk to me for 60 minutes or 30 minutes on like a bi-weekly basis was enough for me to be like, whoa, I think there's something. I don't know what it is, but I think there's definitely some value here. So I was like paid in attention, I think is the best way I can describe it.
Dude, there's such like a parallel to what I'm doing now. It's so funny. And I think people will sleep on the fact of if you're convicted in driving values, a lot of people will give you your time because they like you. Like I just had this conversation with my partner recently. Like we're building, it's effectively a marketplace in like an area of real estate syndication space. And I don't know really anything about the industry. And I'm like talking to my partner and like we're growing. I'm like, dude, I just think people like me. Like we're obviously driving value to a certain point, but they're not like reaching out to me because I'm giving them this expert advice. It's a crowdsourced information platform that I'm just curating, but people are getting on it and talking to me and giving their time because they seem to like me and, like, and my conviction around it all. So dude, it's powerful.
I think it's a superpower. And I think we sort of built that skill set at Gardner as well, being on the phone like every single day, all day. Like the superpower is being able to communicate, but also communicate simply. I mean, I think what you're doing is really exciting. And I think we share a very similar focus and value around this idea of like, whoa, there's a lot of information out there, whether it's how to do security or how to make investments, with GPs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do you validate the information? Like, how do you know you're getting quality? And, I think we really bonded over this idea of like, whoa, build kind of an intimate community in a way, but also give them the tools to help each other. Like you as Invest Clearly are not the expert in investing.
Mm-hmm.
At Cybernest, we're not the expert in how to do security, but our members, our stakeholders are the experts. So like, how do we empower them to facilitate the knowledge sharing, facilitate the value transfer together? And I think you're doing that similarly as well, which is different than kind of what you and I were used to, which is like, we built the analysts up to be the best thing since sliced bread. Like they are the smartest people in the room, and they were smart. But again, when you position your company as like, you're the expert, then the client or the buyer is really just trying to validate, are you the expert or not? And the moment they think you're not, or the moment they're like, wait, something's off here, it just completely changes the trust factor. And it's tough to recover from that because it's like once you make one mistake or your prediction or your recommendation, let's say as a Gardner analyst, isn't right, you're like, wait, should I keep trusting this thing?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's
And
a
therefore
tough
keep
model.
paying. Yeah.
It's a tough model in that way.
Yeah. And was that always your mindset going through? Or is there ever like a layer of insecurity where it's like, dude, I'm not a cybersecurity
Oh my
professional.
God.
Like, I don't know anything.
It was probably the biggest hurdle. I mean, looking back, um, I think I built it up a little bit too much in the sense that I was like, why would they even talk to me? Like, why would they trust me? Why do they think I can build this for this type of industry if I'm not the person doing it day in, day out? But I think it goes back to what we're really talking about like the like factor. Like a lot of people want to work or support people who are passionate about solving problems for them.
Yeah.
They might not need to, like, there's always a good founder story of like, I experienced this problem firsthand. I built a solution. I know it can help other people. Like, I think that's a proven model. But I also think there's another proven model, which is someone who's just so curious and so interested in being like, why is the status quo the status quo? What would you improve upon it? Why would you improve upon it? I do think through that process, being like, would you pay for this is important, right? Because you can go down rabbit holes and, you know, people will always tell you, I want this, I need this, up until the point where it's like, are you going to pay for it, right? Because we want to build a business from it. But I do think there is a adoption when you're just so excited and passionate about the problem. And they're like, well, he's going to go and leave his job and, you know, go spend 5 years building this thing for people like me. I think there's a mutual respect there. I'd like to believe there's a mutual respect. So yes, at the start, it was like, I don't think they'll trust me. I don't think they'll take me seriously. And then again, the way we built Cybernest was not bet.
Yeah.
Or Cybernest team is the expert. It's like, no, our members, our advisory board, our people are the experts. They built that trust with me. And I think there's a lot of learnings there, which is like, you know, you're kind of leveraging distribution in a lot of ways. You're like, I like to think that like startups are, I know this is a weird example, but like oysters. I don't know if you know how oysters live, but like basically they start out and they don't have a hard shell. And so what they do is they attach to like things in the ocean, rocks, different things. And ultimately they're like renting their habitat in a way. In the same way I look at startups, like you're kind of renting audiences, you're renting trust. Up until the point that like you build your hard exterior and the oyster gets a shell and now it can kind of live with the shell and it doesn't need the other things. I think it's the same way. It's like up until the point that we kind of built our exterior in the trust, we can operate alone. But up until that point, like you're leveraging and renting everything around you to survive.
Yeah. And it's such like a contrarian take too, because in most places, any sort of service, consulting, software at times, there is like a central point of expertise and that's what they're selling. So like this idea, you know, like for an example, when I first started Invest Clearly, I talked to this guy who was like a professional limited partner. And we were talking to him about like marketing and getting the word out there. And I'm like, dude, no one on my team is an actual expert in this space. And I was like terrified to go on podcasts. And he's like, you know what? It'd be a real shame if nobody heard about this because you were that insecure. And I was like, oh man. I was like, I guess I'm going for it. And it's just been like, you know, it's the ignorance has worked in my favor in so many scenarios where it's just like, dude, yeah, I'm not putting a check mark on this. The 20 people that actually have done this are, you know, it's a wild concept.
Totally. And now to give you like more context, because it's been a little bit since we spoke, like the core of Cybernest today is we're a security expert network. So what we do now, so we have a free platform where members can join, get access to contents. We sell subscriptions to security teams who want like a private workspace or the data to stay private to the org, and built some cool collaboration. And we have a co-pilot tool where you can like chat with documents and streamline your research. But really the core of that subscription is like, I need support on a project. Like we're doing an identity and access management redesign, or maybe I'm trying to navigate compliance in China. These are some of like the engagements we've done. And I need someone who can walk us through that or has been there, done that, and can give us the how-to guidance. And so now we have a network of experts who've created profiles. We built the scheduling, like the payments, like incentive distribution. We do like call transcripts, and it's kind of turned into this like, true expert network where you can browse the network or come to us with your project. We go out to the security leaders in the network and through Cybernest. We recruit experts through Cybernest, and then they do advisory calls. And so again, they're the domain experts.
Yeah.
We are just the facilitators of that. And we launched Cyber Synapse, which is now a division of Cybernest with my partner, Danny Wolf, who's been a demand gen marketer in cyber for 15 years now, where vendors can engage in customer research for the first time. They can like do product validation, market validation. These are not sales meetings, right? We're not doing like, hey, we found someone who's interested in your tool, but we have CISOs and security architects and security engineers who they can interview and really make sure they're building the right products, or better understand their customer. And so it takes me back to an old version of us at Gartner being like, whoa, all of our clients want to like hop on the phone with an analyst and do a message test. Well, a lot of those analysts don't want to do it. They would push us to like the positioning experts. And then we'd be like, we don't want to talk to them because they'll give them a framework, but they don't know the messaging. So like they're going to get frustrated, right? And so I think I've gone full circle here, which is like, now we're serving vendors, and that side of the business is growing pretty rapidly because for the first time, they can go direct to the people that matter to them, instead of this intermediary who's trying to like speak their behalf, and you just don't know the data. You're like, this analyst is telling me like, we should build this feature. Like, why are they telling us that? But if you ask them why they're telling us, like, they won't point to data points, like client calls that told them that. They'll just be like, this is the aggregation of what we've identified. And so it's like, okay, great. That's important. But like, are you telling everyone that? Right. You probably would tell all of your clients in the Market Guide or Magic Quadrant that too. And so in this offering, it's like they buy access, but more importantly, they own the data. And it's there. Because you got to put in the work. It's not easy, right? You're out there doing interviews, but you finally, for the first time, own the data. And now it's proprietary and you can make decisions. So that is the core of Cybernest today. It's, an expert network selling subscriptions to security teams and vendors. And that was not the founding thesis of the business at the start.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you. Like when you think about a lot of people feel like they need to do and know everything to get started. When you think about like the MVP to where you are now, what was that like? You guys launched, you've got the 100 members that you did the customer development interview. This was maybe, I'm assuming pre-money, to where you are now. Like what were those iterations and raising?
So to be more prescriptive, when I finished the 100 interviews, I was like, I think there's a business here, but I don't know how to build a team for this yet. And I don't know really like product development, like application development in that journey. And so at the time, I was really kind of focused on going the venture studio route. I think I told you this, but which, and for those maybe who are listening who don't understand venture studios, basically what they do is they have everything a startup would need. They have marketers, they have product people, they have engineers, they have, design. And what you're essentially an entrepreneur in residence. Like you come with the idea, like you're the domain expert in some ways, but like you're leveraging their infrastructure, their resources to like build and ship this company. And oftentimes you give away a lot of equity, but I wasn't worried about the equity. I was like, hey, I just want to like build this thing because I have like 100 people who are waiting on it. And, looking back, I think it was the best months for me learning wise. I ended up not going the venture studio routes. It was not the right fit. I had a term sheet from a firm, but they just, I didn't like the equity structure, but more importantly, like the engineering was in India. And for me, it just like looking back on having to like not be close to the engineering team and not having it, in the States, just like would have killed us before we even started. Just like that feedback loop was just not fast enough. And so I didn't go the venture studio route, but why that was so difficult for me at the time was like, I was taking my savings and living off of it every month. And I did that for 15 months of the business. And, I ended up, not having savings, up until the point that I was finally able to raise around and pay myself a modest salary. And, that took a while. I mean, so I raised like a small pre-seed, spent all that money just bringing on an engineering team.
Yeah.
And was like, whoa, this is probably like a big bet, but like, we won't know we have something until we ship it and we have something. Cause like, yeah, you could walk through Figmas and all these things, but like, we needed to really put a stab and be like, does this thing work? Does it do, like, are we going to be able to like get more users and members from it? And I'm so happy that it ended up working out because, 100 turned into 150, turned into 200, started growing a little bit more organic. Security is unique where it's like people don't try things so quickly. They're not just like signing up for things. Like they're like, who are you? Like they read privacy and terms of use, like every word, as you should like read these things when you're signing up for things. And so like it was built over time. But again, as a founder, like time is your secret weapon because you're going to find the nuggets of value and you're going to be pushed into the direction we were. But also time has a big impact on each founder's like financial situation because the longer it takes, the more I had to spend my savings up until getting to points where investors were like, oh, I think you actually really have something, or like, I understand your thesis and I'm willing to back you to prove it out. And if you can prove it out, we see how big this can be.
Yeah.
But it started early Cybernest. It started actually as a community platform where we would do sponsorships and we would do like webinar promotion for vendors. And it was very click-through driven and it was very sponsorship model driven. And what I quickly realized is, one, the growth of the community was good, but not good enough for that viral type of growth that we would have thousands of people, right? For the eyeballs. And secondarily, that has been the traditional business model of a lot of event companies in the space. And like pretty much everyone who runs like dinners for company, like we do like, oh, we'll do the sponsored dinner and then we'll bring security leaders and like the vendor will give their pitch. And it's just like the early 100 people, really like 25, 30 core people I was talking to like bi-weekly, they just hated it. Like they didn't want that. Like everything we talked about and everything they were excited about, they just didn't want it to be another like, oh, like I'm the lead to be sold. I'm the product to be sold. And that is why, while it was a very tough decision, that was why I needed to really raise a lot more money to then be like, okay, we're not going to make the members the product. We are going to build subscriptions for them, like specifically security teams, because obviously, we don't need that vendor model. And then we only introduced the vendor product literally 2 years in. And that was at a critical point where the members, our security leaders, they weren't the product to be sold. They actually were part of the value creation because we pay experts to do this advisory work. So now we're bringing opportunities to them where they can share their knowledge and be compensated for it. And so like, had I known that at the start, how would I know that? Like I only knew that after just like beating my head against the wall and being like, whoa, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? Well, what would make it work? Well, I feel a lot more comfortable if I'm like part of this and I'm not being exploited because of it. Like it's additive, not exploitive. But the time factor, the 2 years, was the only way that I was able to like figure out the business we're in now. And I don't know, I'm not like a startup guru, but I think maybe the learning is like just have enough money and don't give up, or don't run out of money and just don't give up because, time is your greatest asset. But I think it's the hardest part of it too, because having nothing to do with the business, like the imposter syndrome, is this going to work out?
Yeah.
Loved ones are like, betting on it in some ways, right? Like, you have a child. I don't yet, but we will, God willing, in like, 2 years, 3 years. Like, it's very different when, what you could be making kind of in like I'll
Yeah.
call it public markets. Doesn't make sense, but public markets, but you're betting all in because, obviously you want it to work financially. That's important. But I think deep down, you love the game. Like you love building things and you love selling them and you love like creating something that didn't exist before. Like the change factor is super cool.
Yeah.
And being a part of it. Very hard to do, obviously. And, I don't say we cracked the code. I think where we are now is building a business that's sustainable and building a business that can grow. But I'm not in the phase I was in, which was like, do we have the right product and will people pay for it anymore?
Yeah.
And now it's in like, hey, how do we not like, excuse my French, like fuck it all up?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. It's so funny. Like the whole reason I wanted to start this podcast was that whole like 15-month period you're talking about, because there's the strategic and the tactical aspect of actually executing on an idea. What does it take to build software? But that like psychological warfare during that period of time where, yeah, right. Okay, my wife is pregnant. I'm seeing people on Facebook that I used to outperform at Gartner going on vacations and buying houses. And I'm sitting here, haven't taken a paycheck in a year. And I'm like, dude, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Then the car breaks down and then this happens. It's like that I feel like is where, I don't know, like entrepreneurs are made. Like it's easy to get it. It's not easy, but it's like, okay, I have to make this many phone calls. Okay, this is the next step in the build. And obviously there's a lot of hair on every single one of those steps, but it's like, can you simply just not give up during all this adversity? But it's hard, dude. It's like really hard,
Oh, it's incredible. And I think it's, why it's such a, big risk, big reward, of course. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right? And in that way, it's kind of like set up to be like the right expectation. But I think there's something deep down in you, and I'd like to, like I've been trying to be introspective in me, that's just like I wouldn't want to be doing anything else, even if it didn't work out. Like my biggest fear in life is living with regret of the unknown. So I would rather fall on my face 10 times and be like, I did it, I attempted it, I went through it, rather than being like, ooh, I never tried, or it's too late to try, as well. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely like a crazy for now. But I do think like when you have a bias to action, you have the momentum kind of pulls you through. Like when you're sitting there in the early days, I'm like, oh my God, I have this idea. I don't have funding. I don't have a team. Like, oh, I can't do anything right now. Right? Like you find the things to like do that are in your control. And then also the micro learning. Like I feel like you had probably learned more in the past year than you've ever learned ever, and like those skill sets of just having a bias to action, not knowing everything, but like being an expert, almost like a generalist, but an expert in the micro learning, I think is applicable to anything you do in life. And just the confidence it builds of like, whoa, I had no idea how to do this. Now I know how to do it. Like I can always do it now.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's like probably the best like reflection for me, is just I walked into like Gardner being like, ooh, I need to learn how to do one thing. And now I walk into the world being like, I'm not afraid to try to learn how to do anything. Yeah, there's things I'm not good at for sure, but I'm not going to be like, oh, because I don't know it, I'm not going to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those like micro learnings compound into like the bigger educational, but it also what creates those pivot points, right? Is like, okay, you try this, you fail, you pivot, you try this, you fail, you pivot. And next thing you know, you've like faced 100 different pieces of adversity that felt small, but you're in a completely different world, like miles and miles ahead of where you were originally. I think people fail to understand about like, number one, how easy it is to bounce back from those certain things, right? Is like, as entrepreneurs, like you're solving problems, like those problems are part of the build. Like you have to find problems or else it doesn't work. You know what I mean? And getting beyond that is what it's all about, man. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I went through this accelerator program, and I met a bunch of different founders. And I look back now, the founders that closed up shop, you know, stopped doing what they were doing, and I felt like, I don't want to speak across the board, but I feel like they were very good at one thing, or they really identified themselves as like, I can do this thing if I raise money, if I raise at these terms from these, investors. And it's just like, they don't have the bias to action to be like, okay, what happens if you don't raise the money? Like, what can you do that's going to probably not, like, I understand you need money, but what are you going to do that's going to push you closer to like validating something that is unanswered, getting more people who are excited about what you're doing, understanding the problem, like why a new solution even exists. Like, do you understand the industry you're in? And like most people are like, I know more product and I know why we're building it. But like, do you know why that product doesn't exist before? Like, we all think we're like the smartest people in the room and we're like, oh, people need this thing. But like, do you understand why the industry doesn't have this? Because there's like a whole chapter, probably a full book of learnings around why this thing probably doesn't exist. Like where others have tried, what like regulatory things, what like legal things prevent this from happening. And like all of that is like the signals. Like I look at it very different now. I'm like, oh, those are my signals. And now I'm going to solve for those things, because if we can solve for them, even if they're super hard and maybe we don't have enough funding, and who am I to be the one to solve it? But if I care about it every day, and there's not a lot of people who care about it, I think we're going to find some nugget there that probably will be the reason why, this is why experts are joining our platform, and why they're not joining others, or where others have maybe like burned the bridge with them. And let's redesign that process for them. That's just one example. But I think that is the excitement. But again, I can say all of that from a business kind of startup focus. And then the other side of it is like, whoa, in the pursuit of learning, in the pursuit of being super curious, how do I ensure that like my family's okay? Like I'm not making bad decisions for our family. Like the stress doesn't get to me. Like my cortisol levels, I know are high. I think I manage stress super well, but I'd had some health stuff. Like I've pulled my shoulder out 3 times, like sneezed and pulled my shoulder out. And I'm like, well, what is going on with me? Found out I sit at a desk too long. Like I need to do standing desks. Like I'm in a bad position. Like it's all of that is like, whoa, these things are affecting me, even though I'm so excited and passionate about these things. But like, am I taking care of me? Am I taking care of, our families and things like that? Like, does not make it easier. But again, the thought of doing something and regretting it, like regretting the unknown, is more motivating to me than anything else.
Yeah.
So I think it's understanding like, what are your motivators? And if you don't really care about those things and it's just about the money, then you're going to have a really tough time, because most of my day is just like solving problems.
Yeah.
Like even before this podcast, right? Like I had to be like 10 minutes. I need 10 minutes because we had a bug issue, and, I want to make sure it gets solved quickly. And otherwise we have this, call, and then I'm in back-to-backs. I wouldn't be able to solve it or help the team solve it for another 4 hours. So it's those things that you're just like, it's not going to ruin my day. But if you're a person that's like, ooh, problems ruin your day, or like, why doesn't this work all the time? Then like, this is not the game.
Yeah.
For you.
Especially with tech, the amount of things that were like, oh, this worked 30 seconds ago and now it doesn't, but it impacts everyone on the platform. It's crazy that the inevitability of the bugs, which is like, okay, this has to be fixed now.
Yeah, and look, you have QA and you have internal resources, but sometimes your users are your QA, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fun to have the people that you're like, this should work for, be the
Yep.
ones to be like, it doesn't. But at the end of the day, like, you know, the people who are like not willing to use a platform because there's a bug, like, okay, don't serve them.
Yeah.
They're going
Yeah.
to be a tough user anyways. They're probably not, understanding your maturity. They probably are not bought into what you're doing. Um, and so, you need kind of that early group of people who like understand you're charting new territory, you're building something new, you're building it from scratch in some ways. Um, there's kind of a maturation process to it.
Yeah, yeah, and most that are on the journey
Totally.
of the value. I mean, there's always people that talk shit. Like I had plenty of those throughout, but the most of the people were like, "Oh, hey, I got this error. This didn't work," and you fix it. But hey, I know we're coming up on time. What before we go, like, what is one thing that you thought you knew about entrepreneurship and this pursuit of building a business that was just wildly wrong? Like something you didn't expect, or you heard that just isn't true, that kind of you're going through.
I think, okay, so I hope this makes sense, but I think early on, the complex, you think sells. So like, I'll give you an example. When you build a new product and you build it with new technology in a different way, you think the excitement of the newness is going to sell itself, or it's going to like be the reason people care. It's going to be the reason why they go, whoa, you're the smartest person. Like, we should be like learning from Ben, and this company's the coolest. And what I've learned is actually simplicity is what sells. Nobody has time to hear about your cool new thing and the way you're doing it differently. Most people don't even care what is under the hood and how you do it. They care about the value and the outcome, but more importantly, that you do it really simply. And so I look at things now as like, every time we roll out a new process, onboarding experts, or every time we build a new feature, like, I look at it through the lens of like, okay, it might be shiny and cool, but like, is it going to be easily understood? Is it going to be easily adopted? Like, how do we explain it so simply? Because, and maybe this is just my industry, but I think it's everyone. They have 10 seconds, 30 seconds between meetings to like see it and understand it. And when we're complicated and complex and trying to be like so unique, it's like, I don't have time for that. Like, I'll circle back because I don't understand it quickly. And then they don't circle back because life gets in the way. Yeah. And so I think that's the biggest learning is like, we want to build cool, complex things, but focusing on simplicity and also being consistent is probably the best way to build the business or to introduce anything or change people's like understanding of it.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Awesome. Ben, thank you so much. It was great catching up and good to talk to you. And thanks for sharing everything you did. Where can people learn more about Cybernest?
Perfect. Yeah. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, Ben Siegel. Also check out the cybernest.com and cybersynapse.io, which is the customer research vendor product that we recently launched about 5 months ago.
Thanks again, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat.
Later.
All right, bye.